Hello there and welcome. As always, this is Free Russian speaking, and before the video starts, I want to say thank you all who decided to support me financially, be it through Patreon, PayPal, or Super Thanks. I really appreciate your support and generosity, so thank you friends, and have a blessed day. Now, today's video, I will start with the Chasiv Yar direction, where generally within the last weeks, and especially last few days, the situation quickly escalated, as you know, in attempt to address the new threat that Russians presented by starting a new offensive in Kharkov. Ukrainian command was forced to relocate some of their reserves to Kharkov Oblast, thus weakening their formations fighting across all other front lines, as well as denying them any sufficient reserves. This tilted the balance of power in Russian favor, and as a result of that, a lot of changes happened here within the last few days. First, let's discuss situation within Chasiv Yar itself. As for quite some time, Russian forces were trying to acquire this small and fairly isolated residential area of Chasiv Yar, and with fresh attacks renewed with more force, this portion of the city slowly falls to the Russians. As you can see, not only Russians further expanded their hold on the Dacha area, pushing Ukrainian formations to the very outskirts of the residential area, but they also further expanded their control around the street of Zelenoye by acquiring a set of tall concrete buildings. And with the full capture of the Dacha area, Ukrainian northern flank and northwestern rear will be compromised, with Russian attacks that will be coming from the Dacha area in support of already ongoing assaults in the direction of the central portion of this micro-district. Ukrainian defenses here will surely crack. From here, let's move to the southern flank and discuss recent Russian recapture of the village of Andriivka. And those were the territories that were captured by the Russians within the last 24 hours. As you can see, not only village of Andriivka was captured, but also quite big territory to the north of it. Those territorial gains were possible only after Russians successfully took most portions of Klishivka, first pushing Ukrainians out of tactical heights with massive and well-fortified trench network system, and then forcing Ukrainians to retreat from the village altogether. As you can see, according to Syriac maps, Russians still don't have 100% control over the village, with a very small portion of it located in the gray area. After fall of Andriivka and Klishevka, and after unsuccessful Ukrainian attempts at capturing Zelenopilya and Kurdyumivka, Ukrainians ran out of settlements in this area that can serve as strongholds. Now, with Russians controlling all of the 4 settlements on the southern flank, Ukrainian control over these territories to the east of the canal is now under great threat. As you can see, about 80% of this territory is just open fields with occasional force lines, which is hard to defend and, to be honest, quite hard to attack as well, because attacking along the open fields would mean exposing your armor to the enemy artillery. That's why, for the most part, Russians will use small contingent of forces, which would mostly consist of infantry, to slowly but surely attack force line after force line, clearing one trench system after another, capturing occasional strongholds that Ukrainians were able to construct, and in reality, there's only one place which Ukrainians can defend relatively successfully. It is this big forested area located on the very edge of this territory, but these positions will also be compromised, as Russians have full access to them, and in case of full-scale attack on the southern flank, will surely attack as well, to kick Ukrainians out of this forest. Also, here at this point, not only do I want to know your opinion on the situation that I've just covered, what do you think would be the next course of action for both Russians and the Ukrainians? While you're at it, please do consider supporting this video if you liked it so far. A like, comment, and a subscription would be more than enough. I'm very thankful for your opinions, as well as your support for the video. From here, let's move further south and discuss the situation on Avdiivka frontline. Generally speaking, here Russians attack all across the front, mostly in the direction of Nova Alexandrivka and Kalinove, as well as increasing the buffer zone around villages of Solovyove and Semenivka. The territorial change, however, comes from the village of Umansky, where as a result of storming and clearing operations, the small village came under full Russian control. The fall of Umansky would mean that the likelihood of successful Ukrainian defense of Yasnobradivka just dropped to virtually zero, with Russians already attacking in the direction of this village from the east, With the fall of Umansky, new attacks will come from northeast and north, and with increasement of Russian presence in Netailove, attacks will also ensue from the south. As you can see, the village of Yasnobrodivka is located on a peninsula of some sort, which would make its defense extremely hard due to the overwhelming presence of Russian artillery and aviation, which greatly hinders Ukrainian supply and rotation systems. From Avdiivka, let's continue further to the south and discuss situation in Krasnogorovka. Here fighting continues as Russians storm the city from the east as well as south, where heavy clashes continues within the city itself. Here, as a result of successful offensive actions, Russian forces were able to successfully advance and capture territories to the west of the city center, where they were able to capture this entire farmhouse, with this portion of residential area as well. From here, let's continue down south and discuss the situation around Novomikhailivka, after the capture of which Russian forces started attacks in the direction of Paraskoviivka, as well as in the direction of Konstantinivka, and generally across the entire front. And within the last 24 hours, Russian forces were able to significantly increase their presence in Paraskoviivka by capturing those territories and expelling Ukrainian formations from the bigger portion of the village. As you can see, there is still some Ukrainian presence within the very few houses in the outskirts of the village, but most of the village came under Russian control, and if the situation is not to change, in a day or two we will hear the news of its full capture. From here, let's continue to the south and then to the west and visit so-called Vremivka tactical bridgehead. As you can see, at this point there is no bridgehead present, as Ukrainians were able to grind it down in their now infamous summer offensive, but it seems that we are witnessing the restoration of this bridgehead, because recently Russians became extremely active, successfully storming streets of Urozhaine and Staromayorsk. In addition to that, Russians also started assaulting Ukrainian positions to the west of those two said villages, where tactical heights are located. As a result of successful Russian storming and offensive operations conducted in this area, more portions of the Staromayorsk village came under Russian control. Like mentioned previously, in support of those assaults, Russians also attacked along those open fields, so that the advancing Russians in Staromayorsk would not find themselves outflanked. And those are the territories Russian forces acquired in those attacks. So as you can see, the center and the left flank of this front line moves in unison to support each other. Then from here, let's move all the way to Zaporozhye and quickly discuss new recent Russian territorial change near Rabotina bridgehead. Here, as a result of storming operations, Russian forces acquired this portion of the front line. As Russian control of Rabotina increased, so did Russian pressure from both flanks, and you can see that result right now. Slowly but surely, Rabotina bridgehead shrinks, and soon will be no more. Now, from here, let's go all the way to Seversk front and discuss the recent restart of Russian offensive operations in this area. Here, Russians attacked in the direction of Spirne, Novodarivka, as well as Vimka, and attacked all around the village of Vesely, not only to increase the buffer zone around it, but to greatly improve their tactical situation. First, let's quickly discuss Russian gain that happened in between Vimka and Spirne in the direction of Ivanodarivka, where as a result of successful storming operations, those territories came under Russian control. On the more interesting note, Russian forces were also able to acquire those territories, which at the first glance seems not to be so important, but in reality, it could be huge. First of all, let's use this topographic map to better understand the situation. Here is the village of Vesely, and here is where the new Russian territorial gains were made. I'm sure at this point you can see where this goes. This hill area is about this big, and it completely overlooks village of Razdalivka. Not only that, along those named heights, Ukrainians have series of fortifications. And now with Russians successfully entering and capturing few of the trenches located here in this area, we are to expect the situation to continue to develop as it is right now, with Russians slowly advancing and capturing trench by trench, eventually find themselves staring right down at the rear and flank of Ukrainians defending the village of Razdalivka. Judging by the past experience, Ukrainians will not allow that, and if they are not to successfully stop Russians before they capture the heights, they will surely retreat, leaving the village to the Russians. From here, let's discuss situation in the Bilogorovka village, where as I speak fighting continues. Here Russians are actively storming the city streets in attempt to capture it completely, But Ukrainians are not sitting idly here. As a result of a counterattack, they were able to retake small portion of the front here in this area. Here exactly how it looks, and I think only time will tell what will come out of this. Now, at the very last, let's quickly discuss the situation in Vovchansk. Some clarification is necessary, as recent geolocated footage shows Ukrainian control over those areas. Seemingly, at first, Ukrainians really did retreat from this portion of the city, but due to the fact that Russians were extremely cautious and careful, were able to re-enter and retook some of the recently abandoned positions. And as of right now, those are the territories Ukrainians are controlling to the west of the Vovcha River. So as I speak, fighting in Vovchansk city continues, with no results to show as of right now. With this, I end today's video. As you can see, it is probably longer than usual, a lot of territorial changes, and it seems that even more will come as Russians became extremely active all across the front line, even in places where they were passive for the past half a year. As always, humanity calls me to condemn all violence against human beings. Have a good day, and always remember, Russia will be free and great.